My name is Sarah, and I'm 30 years old. I live in a small, quiet town with my 10-year-old son, Jake, my husband, John, and our 1-year-old baby. Life seems simple on the surface, but beneath the calm exterior lies a story of love, doubt, and the struggle to find my place in someone else's heart. I met John 6 years ago when I was 24 and he was 32. We connected over the phone and I liked him immediately. He had a calm, steady voice that made me feel safe, and we talked for weeks before meeting in person. When we finally met, it felt like the start of something special. John had never been married before and didn't have any children. I, on the other hand, had been married once before, but that relationship didn't work out. I had Jake from my first marriage, but with John, I felt like I was getting a second chance at love. John was open about his past. He told me about a girlfriend he had lived with for 4 years. They never married, and he was the one who ended things. He also shared a story about his first love, a girl he met when he was just 16. They were young and deeply in love, but when John joined the army, she didn't wait for him. She moved on, and it left him heartbroken. His mother later told me that John never really got over her. He carried her memory with him like a shadow he couldn't shake. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone has a past, right? But as time went on, I couldn't help but wonder if John's past was still haunting him, and if it would haunt our future. One day, John invited me to his apartment. I was excited to see where he lived, but when I walked in, I was shocked. The apartment was old and run down with peeling paint and outdated furniture. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. "Why is your apartment like this?" I asked. "Don't you work?" John shrugged. "I lived with my parents for a long time. I never got around to fixing it up." Later, I learned from his mother that John had spent years drinking beer with his friends in the park, bringing different women home for one-night stands. He had a card from his first love, the girl from his teenage years, which he kept as a memento. I didn't know how to feel about that. Was I just another chapter in his life, or was I something more? Things came to a head one New Year's Eve. John and I decided to take Jake to the city centre to see the holiday lights. It was supposed to be a fun, romantic evening, but it turned into something else entirely. As we walked through the crowded streets, John suddenly stopped. His eyes locked onto a woman in the distance. She was with her husband, laughing and enjoying the festivities. I didn't understand what was happening at first, but then it hit me. It was her, his first love. John walked away from me and Jake, standing far off by himself watching her. He looked sad, almost lost. I felt a pang of jealousy and confusion. Why was he standing alone? Why was he watching her? Was he still in love with her? I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking. But the image of John standing there, his eyes fixed on her, stayed with me. It planted a seed of doubt in my mind, one that grew with every passing day. Over time, I noticed little things that made me question John's feelings for me. He would bring up his first love in conversations, asking about her life and what she was doing. He even reached out to her brother to ask about her. It made me feel like I was living in her shadow, like I would never measure up to the memory of her. John's mother didn't help matters. She often talked about how much John had loved his first girlfriend and how heartbroken he was when she left him. Every time she brought it up, it felt like a knife to my heart. Was I just a placeholder for someone he could never forget? I tried to talk to John about it. Do you still love her? I asked one evening, my voice trembling. He got defensive. You're imagining things, he said. I love you. Why can't you just let the past go? But I couldn't let it go. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that John's past was still a part of him, a part he couldn't or wouldn't let go of. I started to feel like I was competing with a ghost, and no matter how hard I tried, I could never win. John started to grow distant. He didn't talk to me as much, and his smiles became rare. I felt like I was losing him not to another woman, but to the memory of one. I tried to hold on, to convince myself that I was enough, but the doubt kept creeping in. One night, after putting the baby to bed, I sat down with John. Do you want to stay with me? I asked. Or do you want to go back to her? He looked at me surprised. What are you talking about? I love you. But I didn't feel loved. I felt like I was second best, like I was living in the shadow of someone who had left him years ago. I realized that I couldn't keep living like this. I deserved to be with someone who loved me completely, someone who didn't carry the weight of their past into our present. After weeks of soul-searching, I made a decision. I told John that I couldn't stay in a relationship where I didn't feel like I was enough. I need to be with someone who loves me for me, I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. Someone who isn't always looking back at the past. John was stunned. I do love you, he said. You're imagining things. But I wasn't imagining things. I was living them. And I couldn't keep living in the shadow of his first love. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but I knew it was the right one. Leaving John wasn't easy. It meant starting over, rebuilding my life as a single mother of two. But it also meant finding myself again. I realized that I had spent so much time trying to measure up to someone else's memory that I had lost sight of who I was. Now I'm focusing on my children and myself. I'm learning to love myself, to believe that I am enough, not just for someone else, but for me. It's a journey, and it's not always easy, but it's one I'm proud to be on. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that love shouldn't make you feel like you're competing with the past. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, values you, and loves you for who you are. Don't settle for anything less. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about love, life, and the lessons we learn along the way. Remember, you are enough, and your happiness is worth fighting for.